Happening right now at 9:34, Mayoral Candidate Josh Matlow making a policy announcement regarding transit.
Left Toronto weaker, left the TTC weaker, and left the TTC with significant cuts that have meant delays for Torontonians across our city who are waiting on the subway platform and for the bus every day. This is a service that people rely on every single day to get to appointments, to get to school, to get to work, to get to where they need to go. Toronto's recent budget left the TTC at 91% of pre-pandemic levels. It went further from the recent 96% that it was at previously. These cuts disproportionately affect some of Toronto's most underserved communities. It affects North York, Scarborough, Etobicoke. It affects our city in a way that the TMU, Toronto Metropolitan University, did a study recently that showed that the service levels on 39 of these routes are going to be experiencing 10% delays in waiting times, and these lines travel through some of the most underserved and transit-poor communities. I'm very happy to announce today that as your mayor, I'm going to be reversing these cuts. And this campaign may be the only campaign that can actually source funding and demonstrate how we're going to do it. In the first year, I'm going to be investing $50 million from our City Works Fund to immediately reverse the cuts toward pre-pandemic levels. Then in the subsequent years, we're going to be investing $180 million annually from a combination of the City Works Fund and what I recently announced, the commercial corporate parking levy, the Climate Action Levy. Now, this is a meaningful step toward ensuring that people who live on Victoria Park, on Dufferin, on Jane, on Queen, Keele, routes across this city, on lines 2, on lines 4, people who rely on the TTC every day are not waiting longer. And the reason that I want to do this immediately is because we can't wait any longer to reverse these cuts and invest and improve our transit system. In fact, what the former administration did along with the TTC, I thought was reckless and irresponsible. By cutting the TTC as the pandemic waned, it was the opposite of what we should do when it comes to proving a good business model. Imagine if a restaurant had decided, as the pandemic waned, to provide you crappy service and hike the prices on the menu. Nobody would go back to that restaurant. If we want to encourage ridership back onto the TTC, meet our climate crisis goals, provide service that people can rely on, feel safer on, and can afford better, then we need to invest in transit. And that's what I intend to do. Thank you very much.
Josh, I can't remember how many times you relied on the City Works Fund to make an announcement and say, this is what you're going to implement. How many times are you going to have to dip into that? And two, is there a need to, when we're talking about TTC service and the expectation will eventually get back to the point it was anyway?
Yeah, so we're not going to overcommit the City Works Fund, and we are, counting every dollar that we're investing. The reason that I need to use the City Works Fund initially is because the commercial parking lot levy, realistically, based on staff projections, won't be ready to implement for at least a year to 18 months. So we need to begin by using the City Works Fund as the $50 million investment. But in subsequent years, as we can use the levy, then that will begin, along with the City Works Fund, to continue the $180 million annual investment to make sure that we bring service back to where it was pre-pandemic on the TTC. And the reason we're doing this is because we can't wait any longer. We can't wait any longer to improve service on the TTC, just like Torontonians can't wait any longer on the platform or for their bus. And frankly, the longer that anybody waits on the platform or by a bus late at night means that it's less safe for them, it's less reliable for them, and it's not good enough service for Torontonians. That's an incredibly thoughtful and poignant question, sir. The question was, should the province and the federal government step in and provide more funds? I certainly, call on other levels of government, in particular the provincial government, to get back into the business of funding the TTC with sustainable and ongoing operating funding. It is bizarre and unsustainable that the TTC is uniquely funded by roughly 75% of its revenue coming through the fare box. That's not fair to riders, and it's not really a responsible way and sustainable way to fund transit. That being said, though, unlike some other campaigns, in good conscience, I can't just make announcements about how I'm going to force other levels of government to fund the TTC or fund social housing or bail out our budget, because they have not demonstrated with any evidence that they intend to do so today. They've not demonstrated that they're going to upload the Gardner or the DVP today. And that's why we need to get our own house in order to make sure that we move forward with improving transit and services, because Torontonians can't wait.
Switching gears a bit, we have seen some other candidates in recent days come out with some high-profile endorsements from the likes of former mayors and sitting MPs and even an Oscar winner.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, I don't know that you have that level of endorsements, and you can correct me on that if you like. But what do those endorsements say, and what does a lack of them for other candidates mean for the strength of those campaigns?
Yeah, I mean, I recognize that there are different approaches to politics, and there's more establishment or institutional approaches to politics. The endorsements that I will announce will be from people who I'm proud to be affiliated with, and certainly have a lot of respect for. And you'll hear names coming out over the next several weeks. But truth be told, the most important endorsement for this campaign, when it comes to what I value, are people like the people standing behind me, Torontonians, who care about the city, who believe a better Toronto is possible. And so we're working really hard to seek the endorsement of roughly 3 million people across the city.
We share other services don't suffer. Restoring funding to the TTC, as we heard from the city's finances are in big trouble right now.
Absolutely.
Adding more money to get back to where the service was, but adding that money in now is a difficult task anyway.
It's a very difficult task, but it's a necessary task. Like, I recognize that when we win the election, we'll have a victory party, and it'll be a wonderful celebration with Torontonians. And then the very next day, my administration is going to have to focus squarely on addressing both the budget shortfall, the budget pressure over the next 10 years, and the need to improve services that Torontonians have seen declining for far too many years, and they rely on every day. And that's why we're going to have to make difficult but honest and necessary choices. And again, unlike some of the other campaigns, I would respectfully suggest I'm being upfront with the need for revenue, the need to address the property tax rate, which has not been keeping up with the service reductions, and the need to fund them so that we provide those services to Torontonians. I announced the commercial parking lot levy, because I recognize that we can bring in significant funds toward our climate crisis goals, along with improving the TTC. And I also, disagree with wasting hundreds of millions, if not over $1 billion, on rebuilding a small section of an expressway that's least used, when we have an alternate option of putting it at the surface, still connecting the DVP and the rest of the Gardner, but then reinvesting those funds toward not only the services that I'm talking about today, but frankly fixing roads across the city that have potholes. So I intend to manage the budget in a way that isn't, based on political projects or, sort of what might feel good that moment, or even what would be helpful for a press conference. I'm going to be managing the budget in a responsible way that actually directs funds toward the services that we've seen declining for far too many years.
The other candidates yesterday, Josh, announced you already had an intended platform
Yes.
announcement. You've had one that's essentially an extension of Mura and more money towards not-for-profits, et cetera, based on the vacant home tax. I'm just curious what your reaction is.
So I appreciate that another candidate followed our lead and announced a tenant protection program, and I respect that. I would encourage every candidate running this by-election to stand up for tenants, as I have for many years. But as I said earlier, to earn the trust of Torontonians, you can't just announce what you're going to do. You need to demonstrate how you're going to deliver it. So, I identified real dollars from real funds to be able to invest in our tenant protection program. The challenge with the, basing any commitment or promise on the vacant home tax, and trust me, because I actually looked into this as a potential option for our own campaign. The reason we decided not to is because there are no projections from staff as to how much revenue will come in. In fact, the research is happening right now as to even how many vacant homes we have in the City of Toronto. So if we don't know that number, we don't have any credible source as to how much revenue it would bring in. And if the ultimate goal of that tax is to actually make it self-redundant, because the goal is about decreasing the number of vacant homes rather than bringing in revenue, I don't see realistically how you can have an ongoing program based on a tax that you don't know how many vacant homes there are, how much money it will bring in, and frankly, a tax that you actually want to get rid of eventually if you're successful with it. So I would encourage, if I can provide even some friendly advice to that campaign, they should research that tax a little better, because they'll find that it's actually not a credible way to fund what they promised. You're welcome. Thank you. By the way, thank you very much, everyone.
All right, that is Mayoral Candidate Josh Matlow talking about his plan to reinvest in the TTC, taking $50 million from the City Works Fund to reach pre-pandemic levels, particularly in underserved areas. He named streets like Jane, Keele, and Dufferin. And soon after that, about a year later, he'll probably bring in about $180 million per year, not just from city funds, but also from his corporate parking levy, which he says probably not going to be in place until a year from now if he does win the top job.